Hello and welcome back, and we're on the final instalment of the Celtic staff that I'm building. All the components that have needed to be assembled to make the staff has happened. We've got the copper tip on the bottom, the copper collar, we've attached the deer antler, and all I've done from the last episode is basically clean up all any excess and overspill of epoxy and just polish things up to a point where I'm happy to move on to the next stage, which is, you might be able to see, the wood burning. I've already done a substantial amount of it, but I've still got to finish off this last portion of the staff here, and I'll be heading back up into the workshop to complete that. And when we're up there, we'll have a little talk about where we are with it and possibly the meanings of what I've wood burned on the actual staff. But yeah, we're near completion. All that's left is to finish up doing the wood burning and give it a coat of boiled linseed oil, and then give it some further coats afterwards as the wood soaks in the oil. We do have some repairs I've got to make on the tines, and we'll do that, and then we'll treat the deer antler. So yeah, let's go and make this happen and get this project finished and on its way to the customer. So there you go, there's the seat, and it feels like I've been sat in there forever, but it's just basic equipment. I've got spare tips there for my soldering iron. I've got some sandpaper and fine polishing out sponges, pencils, knives, masking tape, just the paraphernalia to help me wood burn. And as any of you are known, if you've seen any of my channel, when I do wood burning, it's a soldering iron. And it's not the correct tool, which makes it 100 times harder for myself. Right, I'm not going to go into too much in-depth or in-depth at all really about the wood burning process, because quite simply I've covered that on other videos, and I really need to do an update video and do a video in its own right. But at its core, it's basically me wood burning with a soldering iron, and that's quite simply because one tool in my workshop I use for a multitude of other purposes, and most of them not what it's supposed to be used for. But in any case, this isn't a proper wood burning tool, as I've mentioned. So the difficulties I face is when I'm wood burning, I don't have the capacity to go left or right or up pushing when I wood burn. I can only really wood burn effectively by drawing it back. I can move left or right in a slightly diagonal manner, but I can't push this way, that way, or up. So what difference does that make, you might ask? Quite simply, I'm continually turning my project, my wood, the staff. So I'll have to upend it, bring it around, do a line, move around, do another one. So the process becomes extremely drawn out and monotonous. I can only imagine a proper wood burning tool would possibly give you a better degree of control with the burn itself, because you can regulate the heat. I have to regulate this quite simply by the pressure I apply and the duration which I hold it against that wood on one spot. So yet again, as I'm kind of saying to you, everything I'm doing here makes it a long-winded and harder process. And when I'm doing a staff like the one I'm doing there, and I've got probably a couple hours invested just in wood burning as it is, and that could have been speeded up if I was using the correct wood burning tool. But in any case, that's where I am. So let's have a little look, and I know I'm going to start cracking on and getting this last bit done, so we can then move on and repair this deer antler. And there's a little spot on the actual wood. I just want to put a very small bit of filler into a knot, and I'll sand that back just to give it a better, you know, aesthetic look when you look at it. But let's get this staff. And here it is. I can't begin to tell you how much of a numb backside I've got sitting down doing this wood burning. But it's looking quite nice. So I'm going to crack on and get the rest of this, what I want done on it. And when it's complete, I'll let you have a look at it in its entirety. And I'll discuss the meanings and the reasoning behind the actual designs and the pictures on this staff. And that's before we move on to the next projects we've got to do to it. Right, I've got my designs on the wood how I want them. And it's a long laborious task that in itself, and I'm using a pencil so any mistakes can be rubbed out and you can redo the design. But I'm now going to start to wood burn, and it'll probably become evident to you what I'm talking about. This is a pretty long-winded process. So now, following one of the lines that I've got in pencil, I've come straight back to myself. I'm turning the wood as I go and as I pull back. And I'm moving off to my left-hand side there. And I'm doing it on the top line above it. Right, for me now to continue the area I'm working on, I've now got to move myself so that I can draw back in a satisfactory and controlled manner in a different position. So I'm constantly moving around every time I do a line. And a line might only be a few millimeters. Right, I've done that one there. And I can see I'm going to have to move the staff around this side a bit more to actually do this one here. So as I pull back, like I said, this is all very long-winded for me. And I've moved it that much just to achieve that much wood burning. So this is not an effective method that I'm doing it by. Pulling back again. And bringing it down. I can pull off at a very slight angle like that. You have to be controlled because you're putting this under a lot of pressure to get the burn. And if you slip because of pressure, obviously you can burn yourself. You should have safety equipment here and a pad underneath you, so if this does slip, it's not going to burn you. Always think safety. Right. So you can see how long that's taken me just to do that little bit of a Celtic knot. And I've got 4 times that much to do on this little piece here, and then one that I've got wrapped around here. And I'm now at a process or point, I've now got to move the staff again right over here to do a bit more along this point. So you can just see I've burnt it, but there's a lot of carbon build up, and I'll have to lightly sand that with a sponge to clean that wood burn up. That's another thing you got to remember. It's possibly with a I've never used one, so I've got no experience, and that is a proper wood burning tool. How I do it, you get a lot of carbon build up on the actual work and the actual tool. So I'm going to have to clean all that up with a soft bit of sandpaper. And after that particular job there, you may just get to see I have a lot of carbon. I've got to now clean that tip back up so it's like a bronze colour. So that piece of work there, I've got to now rub out any pencil marks that are still visible. Sometimes, you know, you won't 100% follow the exact track of the pencil line, or you might adjust it because you feel you can get a better line or a better mark. Soft back sponge, just to clean up that burn. Use a cloth, but I'm using my t-shirt. And that produces a nice looking wood burn then. I've got this one to do, but before I can go any further with that, I do have to clean this up. And you'll see that it'll go back to like a bronzish colour. I think these are made of nickel. I could be wrong. But if you don't clean it, your burn becomes so exaggerated, and you end up causing damage to the actual design itself, because it scrapes along and bounces along and doesn't transfer cleanly, the heat cleanly to the wood. So I'm going to continue here. When I finish, we'll have a little look at the staff and we'll talk about it then. Right then, I've finished all the wood burning, and yeah, I'm glad that job's finished. So now all I've got to do is touch up the antler with a bit of sanding and some epoxy to fill a few voids. The same with the staff. I've got one little knot. I want to actually just put some epoxy in, just to, you know, seal it and make it look nice. And then it will be to put the finishing oil coats on it. But I'm going to just run through you the designs I put on it. Their meaning in the context of what that staff was commissioned for, not only for myself, for the customer and the wider audience. There is a lot of meaning in that staff, and quite rightly so, because, you know, it will be used by the town crier, and not only the town crier, it'll be used in ceremonies with the bards of Cornwall. So we'll have a quick look at the artwork. Right, the deer antler was put on to give it that hand shape, almost like a mystical feel and look, and Cornwall does have that mystical feel about it, and it kind of represents that. The copper, obviously the historic mining that happened here all the way back through the ages, and they even traded as far into the Mediterranean. People used to come all the way up into Cornwall, you know, well back before the Roman times, to actually trade in the tin and the copper products that could be made from the ore that they mined. And you know, and that represents obviously the seaborne side of it and the mining. The oak, acorn and oak leaves, well, that's just a simple fact that you know, the oak is a well-renowned tree within the British Isles. And on top of that, the holly that I've got here represents, alongside the oak, the folklore of the two kings. The oak representing the king of summer, and the holly the king of the winter, and they're permanently locked in battle. You then go into some Celtic knot artwork. I've done some swirls to indicate the mystical side of it all. Some more Celtic knots, the same here. More on the back. A bee to represent summertime in Cornwall, fertility and crops. Ivy there to represent creeping of death. The stag head to represent the majesty of the Cornish woodlands. More Celtic knotwork. Same on this side. Holly, like I've explained. The songbird. The folklore around the songbirds. more Celtic knots, the folklore surrounding which I've discussed before, the hare gazing at the moon, fertility and the rhythm of the earth. And then more Celtic knots. The fox because it's cunning and wily. The stones, the quoits of Cornwall. I've done the stones there to represent our ancient past. The standing stones, and there's a sword which represents the Celtic warriors that incidentally aligned with the Vikings to push back the Saxons. More Celtic knots. Also King Arthur, the sword represents. A more modern Celtic kind of knot, and that symbolises modern times. And leading down to another oak leaf and acorns, symbolising the eternal life cycle. So this is a little knot here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some epoxy in there and sand it back flush, just to fill that little bit of a void there. Right there, you can see I've taped off that tine, and you can see that I've just got to pack some epoxy down in it, bring it out level, and I can sand it off to recreate the complete shape of that tine. And that'll give it some more strength and bring it back so it actually looks nice. Right, breaking open the epoxy. Try to get a sensible amount in. Move this around. Pushing that right down into that little bit of a split. Right then, what I'm going to do is just let this, I'll probably let the epoxy go off overnight, come back and sand it. And tomorrow I'll bring you along when we start to do the boiled linseed coat on the shaft, so you can see the difference in the colours pop out. It's very light coloured wood, this one. I don't think there's going to be a lot of dark patches, but it'll be just nice for you to see the difference in the actual coloration of the wood dry before I put the oil. And as I put the oil on and it soaks in, you'll see the colours of the wood really pop out. And we'll treat the deer antler with some boiled linseed oil as well. If I was doing a varnish stick, I would probably give the deer antler a coat of, or a misting of varnish, a very light varnish. But as I'm doing boiled linseed oil, that will have boiled linseed as well to match. So we'll put this back and we'll come back tomorrow. Right then folks, it's another day, and where are we? I've polished that copper back up. We've sorted that knot out, if I can even find it anymore. There it is. It's been completely filled and sanded back and polished. And that's nice. It feels nice to touch now. And without hitting anything, I've got the rubber tip on, and there's still a fair bit of copper showing there. And more importantly, the tine that needed repairing, it had a split. As you can see, it's completely repaired, and I'm quite happy with that. So really, it's now at a point I can put the boiled linseed oil on it. The type of boiled linseed oil I'm using is a very, it's not a very thick one, it's quite loose, if that makes any sense. And it does penetrate very fast and very far. So I probably won't even have to thin it down for the deer antler. Most people would, but I've found that the manufacturer that I'm using of boiled linseed oil does penetrate the penetrate antlers very well. So I'll do more of the same. But as you can see, it's a very, very light coloured wood. There are a few bits that are a little bit darker, and I do have patches where there's been small little vines running down through. And when I apply the oil, you'll see the transformation in the colour of wood. But I'm just going to cover the copper with some protection, and we'll get straight onto it. Well guys, we've got the completed item here. It's had a couple coats of boiled linseed oil. It's been all wiped off, it's dried, and it's fully ready to go. And I'll phone the customer shortly and let them know it's completed. It's looking at very nice. The wood has come out slightly darker after I've put the boiled linseed oil on than I expected, considering when we stripped it back it was a really light colour and there was no indication it was going to go this dark. But it has done. But I think it complements the wood burning. It tones down the wood burning, and you, from a distance, you look at the stick, you don't really fully notice the wood burning till you get a little bit closer, and then you can start reading and looking at the actual pictures, and it reads like a book then as you look down through the stick. But yeah, it's come out very nice. I've polished the copper right up, and it's got a real nice sheen and shine to it. The antler has took the actual boiled linseed oil very well. In fact, it soaked it up better than I thought, and it's got a nice silky feel to it. And as you can see, it's got an overall colour which is uniformed, and it's kind of like a very light mahogany. We got the copper at the bottom, and obviously a rubber tip as requested. So yeah, it's come out very well, and I'm very happy with it. So all that's left really to say is thanks for coming along on the journey to make this Celtic staff, and I hope you enjoyed it. But for me, I'm going to phone the customer and I've got a crack on in the workshop. So all I'm going to say is take care, stay safe, and I hope to catch you guys on the trail.